The description in Matthew chapter 22 and the synoptic parallels provides an outstanding opportunity to witness how the gospel narrative positions Jesus and thus his followers vis-à-vis the variety of contemporaneous Jewish sects. One can even imagine that the author of the gospel had read Josephus' description and responded to it, although of course it is unnecessary to suppose here a literary dependence. They both might have just relayed to a well-known reality. The survey of the existing outlooks starts in Matthew 22 in verse 15. Then the Pharisees went and took counsel how to entangle him in his talk. And they sent their disciples to him, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and care for no man. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the money for the tax. Whose likeness, whose picture and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God things that are God's. The call to stop paying taxes to Caesar was perceived, of course, as the call for revolt. The passage then presents Jesus with a challenge coming from zealots who acknowledge God as their only ruler. In harmony with Josephus' description in the Antiquities of the Jews, these instigators are portrayed as belonging to the broader Pharisaic faction. The Gospel states that Jesus is not with the zealots. It deserves notice that Jesus' position here would later serve his movement's attempts to play down the subversive nature of the messianic claim as such, and thus defend itself from the suspicions of Roman authorities. The Gospel then moves to Sadducees. It's verse 23. The same day Sadducees came to him, who say that there is no resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses said if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no children left his wife to his brother. So to the second and third, down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, to which of the 7 will she be wife? For they all had her. Again, what the narrative tells about Sadducees overlaps with Josephus' description. They do not believe in resurrection. Moreover, they make fun of that belief, demonstrating how unreasonable it is. Jesus, however, is presented as rejecting the stance of the Sadducees and embracing the belief in resurrection, ascribed by Josephus to Pharisees, which he envisions here as an angelic existence of sorts. I continue to read. But Jesus answered them, You are wrong, because you know neither the Scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. Not only that, but he takes care to provide a proof text from the Torah itself. It's verse 31. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Exodus 3:6. He is not God of the dead, but of the living. The attempts to find passages in the Torah that can lend themselves to be interpreted as confirming the idea of the resurrection of the dead at the end of times are well attested in rabbinic sources. It is sometimes polemically presented in those sources in opposition to other, possibly Sadducean views. For example, we read in the famous ruling from the Mishnah tractate Sanhedrin, chapter 10, all Israel have a portion in the world to come, but the following have no portion in the world to come, he who says that resurrection is not a Torah doctrine. Now, the belief in resurrection was inherited by the Jesus movement and applied first of all to Jesus himself. Jesus would come to be seen as the first to rise from the dead, in anticipation of the general resurrection in the future. The Pharisaic faith in resurrection became, therefore, the foundational tenet of nascent Christian outlook. And as the Gospel makes clear here, Jesus' followers cannot be identified with Sadducees. It does not come as a surprise that both Jesus' powerful rejection of the Sadducean disbelief and his reliance on the interpretation of the Torah to back his argument are met with enthusiasm of Pharisaic Torah scholars. Having heard now how he silenced their opponents, they decide that it is time to ask for his opinion about the great principle underlying all Torah regulations. It's starting from verse 34. But when the Pharisees heard that he silenced the Sadducees, they came together. And one of them, a Torah sage, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment of the Torah? This is the famous greatest commandment issue which we already discussed, and we saw that according to the synoptic tradition, here also Jesus provides an answer to their Pharisees' liking. The narrative, however, cannot culminate in total unity with the Pharisees. The task of self-identity building necessitates distinction. Thus, the end of the chapter presents Jesus as different from Pharisees in his perception of messianic salvation. It's in verses 41-46. The exact meaning of the disagreement may escape us, as in its very beginning the same gospel does seem to agree with the Pharisees' emphasis on Davidic Messiah. However, the general intention of the passage, where Jesus seems to say something that Messiah is beyond Davidic lineage, the intention is clear. While estranged from both Zealots and Sadducees, Jesus and his followers are close to the Pharisees on some very important points of belief, but they differ from them on the messianic issue. Because they see Jesus as the Messiah, maybe because of that, or because they differ in their understanding of the stages of the redemption scenario, maybe of Jesus' role in it, all these answers may be right.